Today we're going to look at measurements and measurement conversions, and we're going to look at the metric system first. Then we're going to look at the customary system, and then we're going to look at converting back and forth between the two. You can use different methods to do each of the systems, so we're going to talk a little bit about each method that you can use. We're going to start again with metric system, and I've given you a few kind of common thoughts about how big each of the units are in metrics, each of the common units, so that you can get a feel for how big they are compared to customary, which you're probably more used to. So metric length, some of our common units are kilometers, meters, centimeters, and millimeters. 1 kilometer is about equal to 2.5 laps around a track, so notice that means it is less than a mile because a mile is 4 laps around a track. 1 meter is approximately the width of a doorway. In fact, it is just a little bit longer than 1 yard. 1 centimeter is approximately equal to the width of your pinky, and 1 millimeter is approximately equal to the thickness of a dime. Our common units of metric weight would be the kilogram and the gram are pretty common. A kilogram would be approximately the weight of a textbook, 1 gram around the weight of a dime, and then we get into capacity. 1 liter is probably the easiest thing for most of us to think of is a 2-liter bottle, so 1 liter is about half of that, and 1 milliliter would be approximately equal to a drop of water. So if you've ever used an eyedropper, it's about equal to what you would get with 1 drop from an eyedropper. Now, if you want to learn metric measurement conversions, there's probably a saying that's going to be helpful to you, and the saying is, King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. And what that helps you to remember, each of the first letters, K, H, D, U, D, C, and M, helps you to remember the prefixes and then the base units of metric measurement. So our basic units of metric measurement are for length, the meter, for capacity, the liter, and for mass, the gram. And then we combine those basic units of metric measurement with different prefixes. K is for kilo, the H in Henry is for hecto, the D in died is for deca, although the deca is DA before the M for meter or the L for liter or the G for gram, so forth and so on. And then the other D is for deci, the C is for centi, and the M is for milli. So when we look at this, we can combine the prefixes with the roots to make different measurements. So km stands for kilometers, hm stands for hectometers, dA and then m stands for decameters. And then m is just for meters, dm for decimeters, cm for centimeters, and mm for millimeters. And we can use that same process to go through for each of our other basic units. And then what we use this for is we use this to do metric measurement conversions. So let's look at a couple of examples of that. Let's start by, looking at, we're just going to look at these 4 examples to start with. Now, I could use my whole chart. I don't necessarily need the whole chart, though, to look at it. What I might do, and what I often do, is I write just the letters. King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. And then under units, I put my basic units. That would be meters, liters, and grams, our basic units of metric measurement. So then, if I want to change from 1,600 milligrams into grams, I look at the number 1,600 and think where the decimal is. It's all the way to the right. And then this is a really easy conversion. I want to go from milligrams to grams. So milligrams would be under the M for milli, and then milligrams is a unit of customary mass. So if I want to go from milligrams to grams, I have to go 1, 2, 3 hops to the left. I go from milligrams to centigrams, decigrams, and then to grams. So 3 hops to the left, and that tells me exactly what to do with my decimal. 1, 2, 3 spaces to the left is where I need to move it. So 1,600 milligrams is equal to 1 6/10 grams. So notice what this means is the metric system is a base 10 system, which makes our conversion so much easier. Now if I want to change the next one, 3/10 or 3/100 rather of a kilogram, and I want to change it to grams, kilograms are over here under the K for kilo. Kilograms, when I want to change it to grams, I have to go 1, 2, 3 places to the right. So I move my decimal 1, 2, 3 places to the right. I need to put a 0 in that empty spot, and my decimal is now here, so that means 3/100 of a kilogram equals 30 grams. Next, I want to change kilometers into, or change meters rather, into kilometers. So I'm going to start with the 7, decimals right after the 7. I want to go from meters to kilometers. So meters is right here as one of my base units, and I want to change it to kilometers, which is over here. So I got to go 1, 2, 3 places to the left. So I pick up my decimal and I move 1, 2, 3 spaces to the left, and that gives me 7 thousandths of a kilometer. And then for my next example, 8 deciliters equals how many milliliters? Put my decimal after my 8, and then I want to go from deciliters to milliliters. So deciliters is going to be here, and milliliters is going to be here. So again, and I could think about this on my chart if I wanted to, deciliters to milliliters. If it's easier for you to look at it as a chart, then look at it as a chart. To go from deciliters to milliliters, I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces or 4 places to the right. So I'm going to move my decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces to the right. And I'm going to end up with 80,000 milliliters. So 8 deciliters is equal to 80,000 milliliters. So these are the 4 that we've tried. I've put up here. Now I want you to try these other 5. Give it a shot, see what you can do with it, and pause while you're trying it, and then check your answers. All right, now that you've had a chance to check your answers, these are the answers that you should have gotten. If you got any of them wrong, make sure to use your chart, go back and try them again. So the majority of the world does use the metric system, so it is important for us to be fluent with the metric system, to be able to do conversions between metrics, because if you ever go pretty much anywhere except the United States, you're going to need to be able to understand and have a basic knowledge of metrics. But living in the U.S., we generally use customary measurement system, customary measurements, so we need to take a few minutes and talk about that. When we talk about customary measurements, we need to talk about conversion factors. Conversion factors are just telling us what units equal. So for example, 1 foot is 12 inches, or 1 gallon is 4 quarts, or 1 pound is 16 ounces, things like that. And conversion factors are used to show the relationships between 2 different units. They can be used to convert measurements, and they're generally written as a fraction when they're used to convert measurements. So for example, that 1 foot equals 12 inches, we could think of it as a fraction, 1 foot over 12 inches. And we can even think of that, if we think about setting up a bridge map, we think about we're showing the comparison between feet and inches. And there's 1 foot for every 12 inches. Now that idea is going to become really important when we start to look at our customary measurement conversions. So let's do that now. We're going to use rates or proportions. We're going to use probably more so proportions to change between our units of measurement. And when we do that, the conversion factor is going to go in the middle section of our bridge map. So the first example, we're looking at 5 yards, and we want to change it to inches. So my units that I'm using are yards and inches. And what I know is that 1 yard is equal to 36 inches. What I want to know is 5 yards is equal to how many inches. Once I set up my bridge map, and remember, everything on the top, if I put yards on the top in the first section, then everything on the top has to be a number of yards. And then inches were on the bottom in the first section, so everything on the bottom has to refer to a number of inches. So then I look at this, and this is really this proportion that I'm trying to solve. And there's a couple ways I can do that. Probably the easiest way to do this particular one is to do, say, well, 1 times 5 is 5, so 36 times 5 is equal to x, which is 180. So I could figure it out that way. 5 yards equals 180 inches. But remember also this idea of cross products. We know cross products have to be equal, so we can use that idea to help us solve this as well. Remember, we would multiply the two numbers which are diagonal, so 36 times 5, and then divide by the number that's left, divided by 1. That divided by 1 really doesn't change things all that much for us. That's why this idea of just doing times 5 would work. And we still get 180 then if we solve it. 36 times 5 is 180, divided by 1 is still 180. Now this next one I'm going to skip for just a minute and come back to it. Let's try a couple of others and then we'll come back to it. So 336 ounces is equal to how many pounds? When I go to solve this one, I'm going to set up my proportion, and I'm going to relate my two units that I know, ounces and pounds. So I know that there are 16 ounces in 1 pound. What I want to know is 336 ounces is equal to how many pounds? When I want to go to solve that one, again, I'm going to use my cross products to help me. 1 times 336 is 336, and then divide by 16 is going to give me my answer. So 1 times 336 is 336, and 336 divided by 16 is equal to 21. So 336 ounces is equal to 21 pounds. One more example. How many months are in 60 years? Well, I'm comparing months to years, and what I know my conversion factor is there are 12 months in 1 year. What I want to know is how many months are there in 60 years. So I can do 60 times 12 divided by 1, and that should give me x. And when I do that, 60 times 12 is 720. 720 divided by 1, of course, is 720. So I'm going to get that there are 720 months in 60 years. Now let's go back and look at that one that we didn't do yet. 6 quarts equals how many fluid ounces? Now this one, you may not know exactly how many fluid ounces are in a quart because there's several customary measurements between fluid ounces and quarts. There's both cups and pints in between. So that kind of is a little tricky. So you could do one of two things. You could either figure out how many fluid ounces are in a quart, or you can change from quarts to either pints or cups and then change from that to fluid ounces. I'm going to change from quarts to cups and then change the cups to fluid ounces. So I'm going to start by saying I know that 1 quart is equal to 4 cups, so 6 quarts is equal to how many cups? And when I work that out, 1 times 6 is 6, 4 times 6 is 24. So I know that that tells me that 6 quarts equals 24 cups. Now that still doesn't answer my question, because the question is, how many fluid ounces is that? So now I need to take the 24 cups and change it to fluid ounces. So this time I'm going to relate cups to fluid ounces. 1 cup is equal to 8 fluid ounces. So 24 cups is equal to how many fluid ounces? I could just do 1 times 24 and then 8 times 24, but remember also the cross products method, and I'm just kind of mixing it up to show you. You can use either method, whichever method works well for you for that problem is fine. 8 times 24, and then divide by the number that's left, which is the 1, equals x. So when I do that, 8 times 24 is 192, and when I divide that by 1, I still get 192. So I get 192 equals x. So what that tells me is 6 quarts equals 24 cups. 24 cups equals 192 fluid ounces. So what I know then is 6 quarts equals 192 fluid ounces. I could have done that in one step if I had figured out that 1 quart is equal to 32 fluid ounces. Take a moment to go back and make sure that you still get 192 fluid ounces using that method as well. Now, we can use the same method of the bridge map to convert between units of customary and metric measurement as long as we have the conversion factors. And remember that when we write the conversion factors, I use the squiggly equal sign, which means about equal to, because there's not an exact amount. We can't, it's just a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal, so I can't give an exact amount. These are all rounded to the nearest hundredth or thousandth, or some of them to the nearest tenth. So we just want to know approximately what the equivalencies are. So now that I have got some conversion factors, I can solve some proportions. I can figure out some conversions. So 7 feet is about equal to how many meters? Well, to be able to solve that, I need my list of conversion factors. So I know 7 feet, if I want to change it into meters, I know that I need to relate the number of feet to the number of meters. So when I look back over at my chart, I can see that 1 foot is equal to 305 thousandths of a meter. So 1 foot is equal to 305 thousandths of a meter. What I want to know is 7 feet then is equal to how many meters? This one's pretty easy to work out by doing 1 times 7 is 7, and then 305 thousandths times 7 is equal to x. And when I work that out, I'm going to get 2 and 135 thousandths meters. So 7 feet is about equal to 2 and 135 thousandths meters. Now, my next one, 18 and 82 hundredths liters, is about equal to how many quarts? So my two units that are related are liters and quarts. And what I know is 1 quart is approximately 946 thousandths of a liter. So make sure that you set this up properly. The 946 thousandths is going to go on the top because it's a number of liters, and the 1 is going to go on the bottom because that's how many quarts that 946 thousandths of a liter equals. And then when I set up the rest of this, I'm going to put 18 and 82 hundredths on the top because it's a number of liters, and I'm going to put x on the bottom because that's what I'm looking for. How many quarts is that? When I go to solve this one, 1 times 882 thousandths, or 1 times 18 and 82 hundredths, rather, and then divide that by 946 thousandths. And that's going to give me my value for x. So when I work that out, it works out to approximately, now when I'm going to end up with a non-terminating, non-repeating decimal, and that's okay, but I'm going to maybe round that off to the nearest tenth or the nearest hundredth. If I rounded it to the nearest tenth, I should get 19 and 9 tenths. So 18 and 82 hundredths of a liter is approximately equal to 19 and 9 tenths quarts. So notice doing the measurement conversions from customary to customary, or metric to customary, or customary to metric, for each of those, I simply use the conversion factor, and that's how I go back and forth between the two systems. And metrics, it's really easy just to move the decimals. You could use conversion factors. But it's really just as easy to use the decimals. If you're real interested in how you use the conversion factors, I can show that to you. You would put think about this in terms of putting your base unit would be a 1, and then it takes 10 of the decimeters, deciliters, or decigrams to equal the meters, liters, grams, however you want to put it. So, and then I'm going to just use the idea of meters. It takes 100 centimeters to equal 1 meter, and it takes 1,000 millimeters to equal 1 meter. Okay, 1 meter is equal to 1/10 of a decameter. It is equal to 1/100th of a hectometer, and it is equal to 1,000th of a kilometer. So now looking at our conversions, if I wanted to say, go back to that first one and do 1,600 milligrams equals how many grams? I could say the relationship between milligrams and grams is there are 1,000 milligrams for every 1 gram. And I'm just using these numbers right here. And that means that 1,600 milligrams equals how many grams? And I could then do 1 times 1,600 and divide that by 1,000. And if I do that, I'm going to get the same answer that we got before, which is 1 6/10. It's a little bit more work, but I still do get the same answer. You could do that method. It's fine. Not my favorite, but if you really like the bridge maps, it works just fine. And I could use this even if I'm not going back and forth between base units, because, for example, if I wanted to do the one with the decaliters, I believe we had 8 decaliters equals how many milliliters. So if I look at where deca is, it's this one right here, and milli is over here, 1,000. So what I would say is there's 1/10 of a deciliter in 1,000 milliliters, or 1,000 milliliters equals 1/10 of a deciliter, because 1,000 milliliters equals 1 liter, which is 1/10 of a deciliter. That's how I know that that conversion is going to work, that that conversion factor will work. Even though it doesn't have a 1 in it, that's okay. And so then I'm going to put in the numbers I know, which is the 8 deciliters here, and I want to know how many milliliters that is. So to work that out, I would do 1,000 times 8, and then take that answer and divide it by 1/10, and that should give me x. And if I do that, 1,000 times 8 is 8,000, and 8,000 divided by 1/10 is 80,000, which is the same answer I got by just moving the decimal. But again, if the proportion method makes you happy, then use the proportion method. That's okay too.